From the Western Mass News studios in Springfield, this is Western Mass News Getting Answers with Dave Mattson.
Thanks for joining me for this week's edition of Western Mass News Getting Answers. Every week I'm joined by political and business leaders and other newsmakers to talk about the issues that impact you. This week I'm pleased to be joined by Tony Cignoli, the president of Cignoli Company Political, Governmental, and Media Consultants. Time permitting, Tony and I will focus on changes ahead for the legislative representation here in Western Mass, the divide in the Republican Party in the state, and we look ahead to the 2022 midterm election. Yes, it's here. Tony, good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Dave. Fantastic to see you.
You know, I want to start out with the impact of State Rep Joe Wagner's retirement. 32 years in the House, second assistant majority leader. And I look at that coupled with Tom Petrolotti stepping down a couple of years ago. What kind of an impact does that have on Western Massachusetts? I mean, that's a lot of seniority.
It really is. It is gigantic, the impact, because Joe's like a fellow that I would introduce at events here as the Speaker of the House of Western Massachusetts. He had that kind of cachet. And if you look at Joe's track record of bringing things home, not just to his own district, Chicopee, but working with the rest of the delegation to help them with their districts, to what he brought back to Western Mass, it's a list that goes on for pages. And the other piece of it with Joe Wagner, speaker after speaker would look to him, speakers of the House, and say, Joe, we got a tough one here. Can you handle it? Casino gambling, dealing with distracted driving, difficult issues that he got on top of. The cannabis piece before referendum and all of that was Joe Wagner. Just one of those fellows that showed up every day, grounded out, got it done. And I'm hearing this from a lot of his colleagues right now, like, whoa, Joe's not going to be here to do that work. The impact for us here is big. Who replaces him? That's a big deal. And for the rest of the delegation, they lose their leader, the guy that just constantly would be on the phone with personal advice and a variety of other things to help them out. It's a big loss to Western Mass and Chicopee.
Yeah, you look at Joe, and I mean, he just very quietly went about his job. I mean, you didn't hear much. It never seemed like he had any of their aspirations to rise to the Senate or beyond that. He enjoyed representing Western Mass.
He really did. It reminded me greatly of Bill Mullins. Great capacity, great cerebral capacity, intelligence and whatnot, but quiet, get it done. I'm here to do a job.
Who do you see as possible replacements for Joe?
The two names that seem to be spoken about right now the most are Shane Brooks on the city council. He had been council president, was just voted out of the presidency by his colleagues, but very well known. And then the other name that really seems to have been rising up now is Joel McAuliffe, another city councilor in Chicopee and an aide to Senator Eric Lesser. But those are the names, and it seems to be interesting, especially with McAuliffe, it's other people who are suggesting it or thinking about it. They seem to be folks who could be the natural players because of the background they've got. McAuliffe, as an aide to Lesser, certainly knows the State House.
Again, two Democrats. We don't see any Republicans in the mix there.
Yeah, not hearing any names just yet. No definitive Republican player or even an independent looking at it, no.
All right, you mentioned Eric Lesser, and Eric's running for lieutenant governor. That opens up the first Hampden, Hampshire Senate seat. We're going to talk about Eric's run for governor in a moment, but I know Angelo Pupolo was considered to be the front runner in that race, but he said he's going to stay in the House. So we've got first-term state rep Jake Oliveira running, and Sidney Levin Epstein, a former aide to Senator Markey and Congressman Neal. How do you see that race shaping up?
Interesting. When this seat was open in the past, you'd have how many people looking for it? It's a big deal, this Senate seat. It's not just the Senate seat that represents Longmeadow and Ludlow and Springfield. It's the Senate seat of Western Mass. It's got the largest population. And there's another aspect about this seat too, Dave, that we would remember well. This isn't just a Senate seat. This is the seat whether you liked them, loved them, knew them well, supported them. Lesser, his predecessor, Gail Kendaris, and her predecessor, Brian Lees. These are three senators whose body of work is stunning. There are laws with their names on them. So replacing that senator, replacing that seat, it's a big deal. And there's only two candidates. That's what stuns me the most right now. Jake Oliveira, a House member from Ludlow. Sidney Levin Epstein, very, very, very capable young lady. I should recuse myself. She worked in my office for a little while, left my office and went to work for Shimon Peres in Israel. But this could be interesting because they're both very smart. and they're going to get into, I think, issues, and you will be able to see in a campaign like this, if it's just the two of them before all is said and done, very strong specifics from both as to what it is they would intend to do. And this is a district that demands that, and it's a new district now. South Hadley's in the district. It's changed greatly. It's a big district with redistricting.
Leaning it more towards a Democratic district as opposed to when Brian Lee's held it. Of course, Brian, a moderate Republican, appealing to both Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah, well said. Brian Lee's was able to attract Democrats and independents to support him over the course of time. But you're right. Right now, this district is much more Democratic, at least with that side of the aisle. However, like Massachusetts, independent, unenrolled is the largest percentage of voters in the district right now.
Anybody you see on the radar around here, or it's, I mean, there are people who you see coming up and popping up every now and then, but just over the past couple of years, I can't think of any Republican who would even put their hat in the race.
It's unfortunate for the Republicans. The bench is very, very weak right now. And certainly, as we've seen in the last couple of months, there's a lot of documentation out there, and there's been some reporting about how Massachusetts is certainly the most liberal state in Massachusetts. However, there's something else I always remind people. In 2016, Donald Trump got 1.1 million votes in Massachusetts. So there's a base out there.
All right, so that opens up Oliver's House seat. Chip Harrington, a Republican, Aaron Saunders are said to be running. Do you see any other candidates running in that, and you think a Republican could win that seat?
It's more difficult for a Republican now. Again, with redistricting, the seat has become much more Democratic leaning or unenrolled. It's not a strong base for Republican or conservative. It is an area that would vote for a Charlie Baker, or if you're harking back to a Brian Lee's, that type of a moderate Republican, but not right now. And again, good point on your part, only two names we're hearing for an open seat, and both names we've seen before. Something a lot of people forget, too, is that Harrington and Saunders matched up against each other when running for Eric Lesser's seat 8 years ago, when it was an open seat.
It's funny, what goes around comes around. All right, and also we have the rumors that Cecilia Calabrese may be mount a challenge to Senator John Velas. Have you heard
seeing that on social media right now, she herself posting that she's getting signatures. As I understand it, over the last weekend she was out there doing that. That district as well becomes a difficult one. Velas is such a powerhouse. He's well known as a House member. Some of the communities that he represented in the House, he represents certainly now in the state Senate, and he's been active. The energy level is strong. And again, if you look at that makeup, for any Republican, for Cecilia, for an example, she's got to get independents and unenrolled folks to vote for, not just Republican base, if she would have any chance there.
Any chance you think Don Humison would try to get his seat back?
I don't think so. I think Don's done his time in the House, in the Senate, as mayor. I think he's looking to other challenges and whatnot right now. And even for him, it would be difficult to take on Velas. And I think they're kind of friendly, despite being in different parties. Velas has prided himself on bipartisanship, on working with Republicans, not just in the district, but even at the State House.
Eric Lesser now, the run for lieutenant governor. If memory serves me correct, the last successful candidate or person to win that was Jane Swift, who became governor. And I think before that may have been Don Dwight from Holyoke.
Wow, yes.
What do you think Lesser's chances are of securing the nomination? I know right now he's polling, about 5%?
Yeah, you can't go by the polls just yet. You look at a few other things. Lesser has a base across America that he can draw support from, and we've seen that. He's closing on having raised about $1 million already. So that's more money than all the other candidates, I think, combined running. He has the ability to reach deep to a lot of folks that he's made relationships with as his time in the Senate. These 8 years, he's made amazing alliances, especially with a lot of women's groups and others. So I would think if I had to handicap this early, he's got a good potential here. He also balances a Democratic ticket if it's Maura Healey at the top. Now you've got a gentleman from Western Massachusetts, et cetera, with the Attorney General, from Eastern Massachusetts. They would be a good ticket, and some will start to look at it that way. We'll have a good indication on this soon enough because the caucuses are ongoing right now, and we're seeing Lesser all over the state. He really seems to have a good handle on his social media, the rest, and it doesn't hurt to have been, working with David Axelrod while Axelrod represented Barack Obama in the White House. Eric knows his stuff, so I'm trying not to be biased for Western Mass, Hamden County son, but certainly what we're seeing right now, he's doing all the right stuff, and he's getting some attention in the East, big time.
It's going to make for a fun year.
Without a doubt, yes, yeah.
All right, Tony, we'll take a break.
Great.
And when we come back, Tony Cignoli and I talk about a divided Massachusetts Republican Party. Welcome back to Western Mass News Getting Answers. My guest this week is political, governmental, and media consultant Tony Cignoli. Tony, let's focus on the Republican Party. The divide in that party in Massachusetts seems to be bigger than ever, growing even more so under moderate Governor Charlie Baker, one side of the Republican Party, and then Trump Republicans led by Party Chair Jim Lyons on the other side. Former Mass GOP Chair Gene Hartigan said, the party has always had divisions, but says things are different now. How do you read that?
Yeah, very much so, Dave. This is extreme. Jim Lyons at the head of the Republican State Committee, very different than many of his predecessors, very combative. Perhaps from his perspective, trying to fire up what's left of the team. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not a great secret that the Republican Party does not have huge numbers in Massachusetts. And certainly the success of a Charlie Baker depended on him being able to get unenrolled and independent voters over. There's some real battles going on right now with Jeff Deal running for governor. And we're seeing that divide even in the fights for Republican state committee seats. Mm-hmm. There's been an ongoing lawsuit for the longest time. And it's interesting that so much of the party seems to be pointed at, even obsessed with, their anger at Charlie Baker for not being more in line with Trump, more in line with a conservative base that they may be at this point. But to be able to win any of these seats that are out there right now, it's difficult. We're also not seeing a lot of recruiting going on from the Republican State Committee. That surprises me. For open House and Senate seats, because as you know, every member of the House, 160 members, every member of the Senate, 40 members, their seats are open right now. Everyone has to run for re-election every 2 years.
You know, you look at Charlie Baker and the fact that he's always been a moderate, and we know that any Republican who succeeded in this state, even Mitt Romney when he was governor, they were moderates. Yeah. But you also mentioned the number of votes that Donald Trump did get in Massachusetts, which on the surface you think wouldn't be possible, but he has his pockets of popularity here. Yep. And they try to build on that.
Very much so. Worcester County especially. And a lot of us remember Elizabeth Warren versus Scott Brown. Yeah. Scott Brown won Worcester County. And that was amazing that there was that strong lean. It wasn't just Republicans, but again, independents and unenrolled who supported him. So it's there. It's possible to do it. A Republican candidacy isn't something that's impossible in Massachusetts. Look how many Republican governors we've had since Bill Weld to now. The Republicans have dominated the executive office.
You know, I remember the day back, the whole, as far as the executive branch, it was mostly Republican. You had John Volpe, and you had Elliot Richardson, and folks like that, and Brooke, as Attorney General. I mean, powerful Republicans who worked well in a Democratic state. Yeah.
Big names that left huge legacies as well. And we just don't see some of those players right now. You know, even locally, the Brian Leeses, the Michael Knappicks, the Steve Pierces, again, the body of work that they left behind, stunning. And we just don't see that. Iris Holland, that type of a player right now.
Now, Charlie Baker has said that the party's internal drama is preventing it from performing key functions. Chairman Lyons, he's suing the party treasurer. As you look at this, and Charlie Baker has said, I'm not abandoning the Republican Party. I'm going to be here to help those moderate candidates. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like no win for either side.
Agreed. With Baker, there's a real a card there still for him to play. His popularity is still there, and he's got money in the bank. And we've seen this now several times, where he's contributed to candidates, not just Republicans, but Democrats as well, that he thought were good for good government. He's going to be around. I don't see him going away. And with this book that he's got coming out right now, how many times have we seen that before? Where a popular governor in any state writes that great book, gets the book out there, gets on the talk show circuit, wondering what he's thinking about there, 2024, something else. I don't think he's done yet.
Were you surprised Karen Polito got out of the race too?
Wow, Dave. That was the one that shocked me. I thought for sure he was announcing out, and we'd hear an announcement from her within 24 or 36, 48 hours. Thought for sure she would run. She had been raising money. She had been out there, so energetic. That stunned me, because she would be the main opponent to a Maura Healey on the Democratic side. And I know that even amongst a lot of Democrats, there was concern about Polito because she was so darn well liked amongst independents. She would take the mantle of Baker. It would be a little bit different, but certainly we knew she was quite the able campaigner as well. Democrats, Republicans, all viewed her as someone that was quite capable to pull it off. That was shocking. Really stunned.
Do you think one of the reasons Baker decided not to run for a third term and Polito decided not to replace him when he decided not to run was they didn't want to bother with a fight on within their own party?
I think they got kind of tired of that.
Yeah.
The amount of time and energy and work, and also the jump ball aspect of this, the gamble of what happens in those caucuses and with a Republican convention. That, I think, may have been on their mind. Who wants to deal with that after 8 years, especially when the last few years of your term was dealing with COVID and challenges like that?
And that was the other part of it, too, that I thought with him. He must have been exhausted from that because I personally, I look at it, I think he did a good job.
Yeah.
But he just took a beating from all sides.
It was a no-win. You're right. No one would ever be satisfied with the job done, and it was extraordinary. And there were a few times where I think we would see him here on the station, see him here on television, or a few times when I was with him, even in person. Eastfield Mall, as an example, when he came out to look at things that day and review what was happening here in Springfield. You could see it. It has aged him and made him a bit tired. You can see that this was not what was hoped for by this team, Baker and Polito, as the end of this time in office. They were hoping for something else, and this has taken up everything for them. Yeah.
What kind of an impact does this infighting have on a party raising money or the candidates raising money? It can't help them.
What a brilliant question on that, too, because a lot of people don't think about that piece. You're right. Those who would be willing to write the big check, those who are Republican or conservative, even moderate, etc., even the Trump team that's out there in Massachusetts, they're going to be lax to write a check for a candidate or a party that they don't think has an opportunity to win, not just because they're greatly outnumbered by Democrats, but also because they just don't have any real candidates. There's no Baker, there's no Polito, there's no major name, there's no Ed Brook, Yeah. So it keeps people from taking out their wallet. Why would you make the donation? Yeah.
And that's where campaigns come from.
Exactly, the money. Yeah.
Tony, thanks. We're going to take another break. And when we come back, Tony Cignoli and I talk about the 2022 midterm election. Welcome back to Western Mass News Getting Answers. Pleased to be joined this week by political, governmental, and media consultant Tony Cignoli. Tony, we're 8 months away from the 2022 midterm election. If it were held today, do you think the Democrats would retain control of the House and Senate?
It would be difficult, especially with 40-plus Democratic members deciding not to run for re-election. Yeah. That's a bit of a surprise, the Democratic the National Committee to the DNC. But the other part of it right now, we all know how this works. Even if the Democrats can make the strong argument for what they've done under Joe Biden, what they've done with a Democratic House, the electorate's not getting the drift of it because they're seeing gas prices, house prices, the difficulty, the inflation numbers. That stuff, we've been here before. We were here with Jimmy Carter. And that's the kind of thing that's first and foremost in the minds of so many voters. For a lot of us that eat this and drink it and sleep it around the clock, we can make the case for a Joe Biden. You can make the case against Joe Biden. But when you take a look at these other aspects, we've always called for decades the misery index. That's there and it's real. When we're polling, even folks who are telling us they voted for Biden, they voted for Obama, they voted for the Democratic member of the House, they're telling us that this is a hardship for them right now. And they're uptight. And a lot of times, we've seen it time and time again. It is the economy that makes that difference. We're not really seeing, I think, the kind of leadership politically, too, on the Democratic side that's willing to find a way to better explain to the electorate what it is they've done or that they're doing.
Infighting within the party itself.
Quite a bit. You've got the left out there that's been a real problem for Nancy Pelosi. Not just the Ocasio-Cortezes, but others as well, too. There's that great line, I think it was Rahm Emanuel, when he was chief of staff to Barack Obama. He had come up with that concept of never let a good crisis go without good use, or don't let it go to waste, so to speak. And that's what we see. There's always the personal ambitions, Democrat or Republican, at a time like this. You've got a lot of folks kicking around the presidency right now, thinking about 2024 that might get in. And some of them are good party members, but at the same time, they're also thinking about, their own opportunity that may come from this, that if the Democrats were to fall and to fail in 2022.
Let's talk about 2024. I mean, the fact that, Joe Biden will be in his 80s, do you think he'll run again?
I don't. I really don't. I think in his heart of hearts and knowing him for decades now, he knows that's not a possibility. He also knows he can't say it just yet. Because to become that lame duck this second, it opens up so much more. It would really get some other Democrats out there moving and motivating around. Some who would want to stop Kamala Harris from being the heir apparent, which I don't think she actually is. You're seeing maneuvering right now from some players, but I do not believe he'll run again. I know that he knows this has been an exhausting situation, and you can see it. This is a very tired president already.
Sure, for a younger man, it would be tiring, and add COVID into the mix, and I suppose you look at it, and he decides that. The other part of it is, if the Republicans take control of the House and Senate again, we're talking another 2 years of gridlock.
There's that. There's the gridlock, not getting things done in reality and perception as well to the general electorate.
And he could, I suppose, take the aspect of this, well, look, I need to focus on being president and go on. So he doesn't run 2024. Kamala Harris is not the front runner. Who do you see getting into it?
It's interesting right now. I would not count out Pete Buttigieg. Definitely, he's interested. He'll be 40 years old at that time, a little more seasoned. He was one of the best players out there in the last election. What he did in New Hampshire was stunning to come that close, a point away from Bernie Sanders. So Buttigieg is there for sure. Cory Booker, we're watching a lot because he's just so active on social media, algorithms, etc. He's there, he's present, and you know that he wants it. Governor Newsom of California, Governor Cooper of North Carolina, you can see it, you can feel it. There's an interest there. Newsom having survived his recall, that was helpful to him. They're out there. Certainly, too, we think about home, Massachusetts. If there's no Bernie Sanders in the race, and there won't be, because he would be 83 years old at the time, it leaves that lane open for Elizabeth Warren, that liberal lane. Does she consider it again? Does she look to go again? I think her name is out there and being tossed around as well on the Democratic side. Those are the folks we see as the most plausible of all right now.
Now, on the Republican side, you see McConnell to some extent as Senate president, but Mike Pence and Chris Christie really starting to distance themselves and become more critical of Donald Trump. Do you see Trump running again in 2024? And we had mentioned in the break that there's a lot of people on the Republican side who don't want him to be the nominee.
He holds everything up for those who are ambitious for down the road. He holds everything up for Republicans that are interested in actually perhaps getting some things done if they have a Republican House and Senate. He takes all the air out of the room. To take a quote from Deval Patrick back on the day on something else. I think there are a lot that would prefer for him not to run. His own base, that 30%, that 35%, they're enamored. They want him to go. But I think that he himself probably will not want to do it. It's rigorous. It's so challenging. You lost re-election. There's so much apparatus that has to be moved, and there are so many others in the way. It's not just the Democrats. There are others who want that presidency, who want that corner. DeSantis will be a problem for Trump. The breaks that he's got with other players. My gut is that he does not run again. I don't think we're going to see Donald Trump. I think he's going to focus on other things, and he may have other issues and problems, legal issues, etc., to have to still deal with.
All right, Tony, so much to talk about, so little time. We are out of time.
Wow, okay.
Thanks for sharing your thoughts and insights with us. And thanks to all of you at home for watching and listening. I'm Dave Mattson. Stay safe and stay well if you can. Join us next week for Western Mass News, Getting Answers.